Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. It's 7:45. Let's go ahead and get started. I don't believe there is a verse for the evening, but we can go ahead and jump into today's kirtan, which is going to be led by Madhav Prabhu. So, Uncle, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself, and the floor is yours.
What is this? No, I think there's no video. What's the problem? For a second. Yeah, once I saw it, but for a second, and then there's no video. Is there any problem with the video? What's going on?
It shouldn't be. You should just be able to press the button and turn it on.
What button? I think I did the same thing which I was doing every time. Now I cannot see any button. So I don't know what's going on.
When you see, it should be right next to your mute button.
I cannot even see the mute. Now it is.
Now we see you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so there's no mute. Yeah. Okay, all right. So Hare Krishna, all the devotees, Dandavat Pranam. So let's get started. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine
Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyata Deshatarine
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Jaya Radha Natvar Radha Natvar Radhe.
Jaya Radha Hare Radha Hare Radhe
Jaya Radha Natvar Radha Natvar Radhe.
Jaya Radha Natvare Radha Natvare Radhe
Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe.
Jaya Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe
Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe.
Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe
Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe.
Jaya Radha Golokananda Radha Golokananda Radhe
Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol.
Nitya Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitya Gaur Hari Bol
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Auntie. Thank you, Uncle. So today is a very special day. It's the first day of this series. His Grace Sureshwar Prabhu has joined us for the first time. So those of you that are not familiar with Prabhu, he joined the movement in 1970, accepted first initiation from Srila Prabhupada in 1971 and second initiation in 1972. A lot of his service was centered around Prabhupada's book, whether it be distributing them, uh, studying them, writing articles based off of them. That was majority of his service. I believe he was teaching in 2011 at the Mayapur Institute when he wanted to deepen the connection that everyone had with Prabhupada. And with the encouragement of the GBC's Strategic Planning Committee, he was encouraged to start this seminar series. And so we are fortunate enough to have Prabhu join us and start this series with us. So without further ado, Prabhu, the floor is yours.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I'm just trying to, okay, I think I got it. Yeah. All right. Okay. Yes, I'm very excited to be with you all, as you say in Tennessee. Thank you for welcoming me to your online Sangha, which is the way we do it these days. I used to travel all over the world with this, but now it's all over the Zoom world. So what follows is the first lesson of what I call Founder Acharya Essentials, which is a streamlined Zoom version of my multimedia interactive Founder Acharya seminar series that I've been developing and presenting in front of live audiences since 2012. So our first lesson is called The Spiritual Masters. So what I'm going to do is do kind of a dramatic reading from this script I've written. And then after I finish, I'm going to ask you to ask me questions or make comments. So the year is 1972. In New Vrindavan, USA, it is Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja. As the sun climbs to the meridian, the thick mist shrouding the West Virginia foothills gives way to a spotless blue. Inside a hilltop pavilion, hundreds of guests and devotees, politicians, journalists, and academics among them, have gathered to observe the 76th anniversary of Prabhupada's birth. It is to the guests especially that Prabhupada directs his address. So this is a direct quote from the address. I happened to be there. I was sitting just a few yards from Prabhupada's makeshift Vyasasan, which was in a corner of this pavilion. The devotees at New Vrindavan erected this pavilion at the top of Bahulaban Hill. So here's Prabhupada. Ladies and gentlemen, this ceremony, of course, those who are my students, they know what is this ceremony. those who are visitors, for their information, I may inform you something about this ceremony. Otherwise, it may be misunderstood. An outsider may see it that why a person is being worshipped like God. There may be some doubt. Well, doubt indeed. In the 1960s and 1970s, there was a big spike in the number of opportunistic gurus coming to the West, streamlining Vedic revelation to suit modern tastes and reaping the profits. To establish trust, Prabhupada begins to demystify, quote, the guru by connecting him to other gurus in, quote, parampara, a disciplic succession of authentic spiritual masters descending from Lord Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demystification continues, so this is also a direct quote. Quote, on the top of the mango tree, there is a very ripened fruit, and that fruit has to be tasted. So if I drop the fruit from up, it will be lost. Therefore, it is handed down, handed over, after one, after one, after, then it comes down. So all Vedic process of knowledge is taken from the authority, and it comes down through disciplic succession, unquote. Now, well aware of modern antipathy to authority, Prabhupada then compares the guru to that venerable American pedestrian, the mailman. Quote, just like a post peon comes and delivers you, say, $100, so he is not delivering that $100. Your friend has sent you $100. And his business is to hand over that $100 as it is, without any change, without taking $1 from it, no, or adding, no addition, no subtraction. His honesty, his perfection, is that he delivers you that $100, which is sent by your friend. He may be imperfect in so many other ways, but when he does his business perfectly, he is perfect. Similarly, we receive perfect knowledge from Krishna through the agency of spiritual master, unquote. I call this section now of the top, Guru is one, gurus are different. The guru as God's mailman, down to earth, yet out of this world. In this sense, all genuine gurus are one. Those guests who go on to read Prabhupada's teachings will learn how all genuine gurus also differ. In the very first text of the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, the definitive biography of Lord Krishna's golden avatar, Lord Chaitanya, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami begins by offering his respectful obeisances to Gurun, his many spiritual masters, Gurun being the plural of guru. In the book's introduction, Srila Prabhupada notes, quote, he, Kaviraj Goswami, uses the plural here to indicate the disciplic succession. He offers obeisances not to his spiritual master alone, but to the whole parampara, the chain of disciplic succession, beginning with Lord Krishna himself, unquote. Later in the first chapter, text 35, Kaviraj Goswami offers his respects to, quote, my initiating spiritual master and all my instructing spiritual masters, unquote. Prabhupada comments, quote, a devotee must have only one initiating spiritual master, because in the scriptures, acceptance of more than one is always forbidden. There is no limit, however, to the number of instructing spiritual masters one may accept. Generally, a spiritual master who constantly instructs a disciple in spiritual science becomes his initiating spiritual master later on. I'll read that again because it's so important. Generally, a spiritual master who constantly instructs a disciple in spiritual science becomes his initiating spiritual master later on. Now, that last sentence of that paragraph indicates the natural, normative guru-disciple relationship, sustainable over time. Although Prabhupada was uniquely empowered to spread Krishna consciousness worldwide within a few years, it is worth noting that he entrusted the thousands of disciples he was initiating to the care of his local leaders and senior devotees. Now, decades on, to glimpse how his movement's guru-disciple culture can become more local and sustainable, the way he himself describes it. Let's continue to examine Prabhupada's presentation of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita's foundational first chapter, quote, the spiritual masters. So this whole first lesson is based on this chapter, first chapter of CC, where Prabhupada takes us on a brief tour of Guru Tattva. Next section I call Initiating and Instructing Gurus. In the years since Prabhupada's passing, the spotlight on the initiating spiritual master may have led members of his movement to believe that to initiate disciples requires more qualification than to instruct them. In his comments to text 34, Prabhupada disagrees. Quote, the initiating and instructing spiritual masters are equal and identical manifestations of Krishna, although they have different dealings, unquote. In his comments to text 47, Prabhupada raises the point to a warning. Quote, there is no difference between the shelter-giving Supreme Lord and the initiating and instructing spiritual masters. If one foolishly discriminates between them, he commits an offense in the discharge of devotional service, unquote. Of course, the potential to have many instructing gurus does not obviate, that means render unnecessary, the requirement to accept initiation from a singular guru. In the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 6, quote, how to discharge devotional service, Prabhupada identifies the first two principles of devotional service as 1, accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a bona fide spiritual master, and 2, becoming initiated by the spiritual master and learning how to discharge devotional service from him, unquote. So we need both rites of passage on our journey home to Krishna. We need to accept shelter and we need to become initiated. When a devotee once asked Prabhupada, which was more important, studying the scriptures or serving a person whose life exemplifies the scriptures? Without hesitation, Prabhupada indicated the latter, quote, because the guru can pull your ear. In Prabhupada's movement today, initiating gurus may act like parents and instructing gurus like well-wishing relatives. Their relative influence, however, depends on how those relationships develop over time. Our parents are always our parents, yet sometimes we become closer with our relatives, especially if our parents are distant. Nonetheless, if all are well-wishers, serving cooperatively within the founder Acharya's mission, harmony and spiritual progress prevail. This section is called The Power of Commitment. Heavy with spiritual knowledge, all genuine gurus are teachers. At the same time, their impact on our lives varies according to the depth of their commitment to us. Continuing his commentary to text 34, Prabhupada writes, quote, Gurun is plural in number because anyone who gives spiritual instructions based on the revealed scriptures is accepted as a spiritual master. Although others give help in showing the way to beginners, the guru who first initiates one with the Maha Mantra is to be known as the initiator. And the saints who give instructions for progressive advancement in Krishna consciousness are called instructing spiritual masters. Unquote. Now notice the progressive commitment from introducing to initiating to instructing. Whoever instructs us the most is naturally more influential in our lives. And that line again, I re-quote. Quote, generally, a spiritual master who constantly instructs a disciple in spiritual science becomes his initiating spiritual master later on, unquote. Even if the guru doesn't say a word, the guru is always teaching, especially by example, the most powerful teacher. Quote, example is better than precept, and quote, actions speak louder than words. This section is called, So You, Every One of You, Become Guru. For the devotees listening to Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja address, their appreciation of his unique position is increasing. Seated on a throne-like crimson dais, Prabhupada is a guru of gurus, quote, a master at whose feet all masters sit, unquote. Although their commitment to him is as green as their summer surroundings, his commitment to them is timeless, and his ongoing request difficult for most of them to even imagine. Quote, become guru. Prabhupada's request is no other than the request of Lord Chaitanya himself. In the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 7, text 128, the Lord tells the Brahman Kurma, quote, instruct everyone to follow the orders of Lord Sri Krishna as they are given in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, become a spiritual master and try to liberate everyone in this land, unquote. The first sentence of Prabhupada's commentary to the text says it all. Quote, this is the sublime mission of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, unquote. As recorded in the Bhaktivedanta database, in hundreds of lectures, morning walks, room conversations, letters, and public and private events, Prabhupada cited the above verse as a reminder of the Lord's request, become guru. From the beginning through the middle to the end of Prabhupada's global ministry, these reminders to his followers were relentless. Here are two examples. Quote, I want that all of my spiritual sons and daughters will inherit this title of Bhaktivedanta, so that the family transcendental diploma will continue through the generations. Those possessing the title of Bhaktivedanta will be allowed to initiate disciples. Maybe by 1975, Prabhupada's writing this letter in 1969, maybe by 1975, all of my disciples will be allowed to initiate and increase the numbers of the generations. That is my program. Letter to Hansaduta, 3 January 1969. Here's another become guru, quote. This is from a room conversation. So you, every one of you, can become guru. Now you may say that I am not interested to become a guru, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that if you are not interested, that is not very good. You should be interested. You must be guru. That is success of your life. That was from a room conversation in Tehran, 13 March 1975. And I should say here, Prabhus, that I'm approaching the end of the talk. So please start thinking about any questions or comments you may have after I'm finished. This final section is called Strictly Follow. While he was spreading Krishna consciousness worldwide, Prabhupada anticipated the disorder that would likely befall his movement after his passing. He even referred to it indirectly in one of his Bhaktivedanta purports. Quote, the main business of human society is to think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead at all times, to become his devotees, to worship the Supreme Lord, and to bow down before him. The Acharya, the authorized representative of the Supreme Lord, establishes these principles. But when he disappears, things once again become disordered. The perfect disciples of the Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. That's Bhagavatam 4:28-48 purport. Now, Prabhupada wrote that purport way back in around 1972, fully 5 years before he disappeared. So even back then, he was anticipating what would happen, because it's inevitable practically. When someone of Prabhupada's stature leaves, things become disordered. But then Prabhupada said, but when he disappears, things once again become disordered. So the perfect disciples of the Acharya try to relieve the situation by sincerely following the instructions of the spiritual master. Prabhupada anticipated that some of his leading disciples, out of immaturity, might try to imitate his unique position as Jagat Guru, a universal teacher. At the same time, his relentless reminders to become genuine gurus indicate a greater concern that in their supreme esteem for their founder Acharya, his followers would not mature to become gurus in their own right and shelter others in Lord Chaitanya's mission. How then would Krishna's mercy reach every town and village, as the Vedic scriptures had foretold? And how would every sincere aspirant receive the personal care and guidance they would need to make the journey home, back to Godhead? In his writings, therefore, Prabhupada made it clear that the most important qualification to become a guru was to, quote, strictly follow the instructions of Guru and Krishna. Here's a letter excerpt, an early letter, 68. Quote, a person who is liberated Acharya and Guru cannot commit any mistake, Prabhupada wrote an early disciple. But there are persons who are less qualified or not liberated, but still can act as Guru and Acharya by strictly following the disciplic succession. Even Srila Prabhupada, out of his humility, even though he was on the highest levels of Krishna Prema, sometimes he would say to us, I may not be perfect, but because I'm following the perfect, therefore I am perfect. So that's the principle, just strictly following. One need not be a superman or a superwoman to be a regular spiritual master, liberated or non-liberated. A guru is genuine if he or she, quote, strictly follows the orders of Guru and Krishna. By Prabhupada's reckoning, his movement likely has more local gurus than its own members may recognize. They simply need to be formally approached for guidance. and formally encouraged to give it. As Prabhupada told his disciples in Hawaii, quote, "We require many millions of gurus." Pens scribbling, cameras rolling, his American guests listened to Prabhupada close his Vyasa Puja address. As he looks into their eyes, Prabhupada is concerned that they've correctly heard and understood his message. Quote, this is how Prabhupada ended. I remember this very distinctly, how he was looking in their eyes. And I mean, because everybody, the New York Times was there, radio stations were there, congressmen, journalists, politicians, scholars. Quote, "So this is the position of a spiritual master. Don't misunderstand that this person is sitting very comfortably and taking all honors and contribution. It is needed just to teach them how to respect the representative of God. This is the sum and substance of Vyasa Puja." Thank you very much. So thank you very much for listening, Prabhus. Now, if you have any questions or comments, I'll be very happy to hear them. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dandavad Prabhuji. This is Ram Giridhari Das. Prabhu, it was very, very wonderful to listen to their compilation. I have two questions. I'll ask the first one. You were mentioning about the Siksha Gurus. I mean, the instructing spiritual masters can be many. The typical problem that, or typical situation, let me use it that way, where we see in the situation, the preaching initiatives are, there can be always two correct instructions. And there are always, like somebody, have got more than one initiative instructing spiritual masters. So they may have two seemingly contradicting instructions. And we have seen in the past in several preaching initiatives where there are some confusions creep in. So, and incidentally, the closeness to a Diksha Guru is also sometimes a question mark, because it's not so easy to reach to a bona fide, to our own Diksha Gurus because of various practical reasons. So how does someone take a decision on what to be executed?
Okay, sounds like there's two questions here. One, apparently contradictory instructions coming from different gurus one may have. Like we have one initiating guru, but we can have unlimited Siksha gurus. And the other was, let's see if I got the other one. Because maybe Diksha gurus are far away, how to connect with a Diksha guru? Is that what you asked?
Well, I was, trying to preempt myself to say that if there is contradiction to a initiating Siksha Guru, maybe we can approach a Diksha Guru to get it resolved. But then I'm saying that, it is also not so easy. So sometimes the devotee remains in confusion. That's why I was mentioning that point in that question.
So it's really one question, just resolving apparent contradictions. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I can tell you from, Prabhupada walked among us for 12 years. I joined the movement in 70, so I was there for 7 of those years. I mean, even when Prabhupada was the only guru in the Hare Krishna movement, he appeared to give instructions that were contradictory. Like I remember I was traveling with Satsrup Maharaj, 1972, and so Satsrup Maharaj had written Prabhupada that because Satsrup Maharaj at that point, he was the GBC of the only Gurukula in the movement in Dallas, the first experiment, the first attempt to have a Gurukula. So we were traveling with Maharaj, distributing back to Godheads and going to campuses, and we were collecting funds, and we were sending it all to the Gurukula. So Maharaj, 72 was the year that there was a big explosion of book distribution. 71, the devotees sort of caught on how to do it. And in 72, it was a big tidal wave of book distribution. So everybody was getting swept up in that. So Satsur Maharaj wrote Srila Prabhupada and said, so I am overseeing the Gurukula, but, and you say that's very important, but now you seem to stress book distribution more than anything else. So what's more important? So Prabhupada wrote a letter back. I forget the whole thing, but I remember the phrase that caught my ear that still stays with me is that, why do you say one thing is more important than another? Krishna's head is important. Krishna's tail is important. So everything's important. There's nothing more important than raising our own children as Vaishnavas. And at the same time, we have to make the world aware of Krishna. So that's why I'm stressing, distribute book, distribute book, distribute book. So we have to sort of learn how to live with apparently, notice that's the key word, apparently contradictory instructions. It really depends on the context and the point Prabhupada is trying to make. There's really no contradiction in the ultimate issue. But to resolve contradictions, the word is paradox, we have to go deeper. And we're going to hear a lot about this in lesson 8 of this series. It's, I call it, to love is to cooperate. So to really find enough commonality, common ground to cooperate, we really have to go deep, because there appears to be many competing ways to hear Prabhupada, to understand Prabhupada, to transmit his message. But there's really no contradiction. It's just a matter of understanding him in context and knowing how to pass his timeless message on in contemporary ways, which will catch the modern mind and the modern ear. As far as when I teach the full Founderacharya series, in this lesson, I didn't mention in this streamlined version, I make a reference to a great acharya in our Gaudiya line, contemporary of Mahaprabhu, named Srila Narahari Sarkar Thakur. And the Thakur, he wrote a book called Sri Krishna Bhajanamrita. And in that Bhajanamrita, there's a lot about guru-disciple. And the Thakur says that one will hear from many people, many sadhus, many acharyas, but to really understand how to apply those teachings in one's own life, one needs to take those instructions that he hears from other sadhus and bring it to the feet of his own spiritual master. My dear Gurudev, I have heard this. First of all, is it right? Is it correct? And second of all, how do I actually, can I apply this in my life? So in ISKCON, I have a dear friend named Krishna Kshetra Swami. And he, even as a brahmachari for many years, he was initiating people. And then he finally took sannyas a few years ago. And as I was being approached to take up the service by my superiors, I thought of Krishna Kshetra Maharaj. I think he had just taken sannyas. So I brought up the fact that, Prabhupada, he's so powerful. He was able to travel all over the world, and everybody was able to feel connected to him just through sound vibration, either his spoken word on the cassette tapes, that was the technology of the day, or through his books that were coming out. We never really felt distant from him because his vibration was so powerful. We all felt connected to him. Now, when you initiate, Maharaj, how do you manage, because you're not necessarily with your disciples, just like in the ancient, Indian village model, as Prabhupada said, generally the one who gives the shiksha becomes the diksha guru. But in the modern age, people are traveling all over the place, gurus and disciples. So Maharaj said, oh, very good question. One of the things I encourage my disciples to do after I initiate them, I say, now, I won't always be where you are, and I won't even always be able to answer you timely. Even if you email me, I might be too busy. I might have so many things going on. It might be a while. So I heartily encourage you, wherever you are, wherever you're serving, to take shiksha from the many wonderful devotees in the Hare Krishna movement, especially the senior devotees. They're a treasure house of experience and wisdom. So please develop these strong shiksha relationships. And Prabhupada was doing the same thing. As he was traveling all over the world, he was depending on his temple presidents and senior devotees to vet, to examine prospective disciples, and he would initiate us based on their recommendation. It was just too much. In the beginning, he was able to see everybody personally and personally examine them to see if they were serious and sincere to follow principles and chant rounds. But it just became too much. Right around the time I joined, the movement was exploding, this 1970, 71. So Prabhupada, he depended on senior devotees to actually develop these shiksha relationships with the newcomers. And then based on their recommendation, then Prabhupada would agree to accept us as his disciples. So the main thing is the founder acharya. We all have to find the common basis in Srila Prabhupada. And if our shiksha and diksha gurus are doing their job, then they're deepening, enhancing, and enriching our foundational core relationship with the founder acharya. Because at the end of the day, we're all Prabhupada Anukas for all generations, for all God families, for all time. And that's how the movement will go on, united. So I'm getting a little off the topic now, but that's a big theme in the seminar. But yeah, back to the point of, even within Prabhupada's spoken and written word, you will come across things which appear contradictory, but they're not contradictory. You just have to know the context. You have to know why Prabhupada's emphasizing this thing at this particular time, whether it's in the books or in the letters or in the morning walks or in the room conversations. And that's a life's work. So you say, what to do? Well, study. And then with the help of the senior devotees, ask questions. Pariprashnena sevaya. And things come clear over time. Good question. Are there any more questions or comments?
Well, I don't have a question, but I did want to bring to your attention that one of your god brothers, a very dear friend of ours, His Holiness Hanuman Prashik Maharaj, is on the call as well today.
Oh, great. Wow. It's not often we meet a dramatist and a scientist in the same body, but Maharaj is one of those unique people. Jai Maharaj, Hare Krishna. Maybe Maharaj would like to make a comment. Whoop.
Maharaj, any comments?
I asked him to unmute, so hopefully he will in a second.
Okay.
While we are waiting for Maharaj to unmute himself, I have a question. When we sing the Guru Ashtak last verse, Yasa Prasada, Bhagavad Prasada, does it imply to only Diksha Guru or even to Shiksha Guru?
This reminds me of when I was in Mayapur, just as COVID was breaking last February at the ILS. I took Banu Maharaj's seminar on Shiksha and Diksha. Maharaj famously, he likes being a Shiksha guru, and doesn't like, I mean, his service is writing and translating and teaching. So it's very, as anyone who initiates knows, it's like being a parent. So it's a big time commitment to do that. So Banu Maharaj, he prefers to be Uncle Banu, or that's what they call me here in Tucson, Uncle Sureshwar. So at this seminar at the ILS back in February, last February now, yeah, in 2020, he was saying that even from Prabhupada's, just take Prabhupada's Vani, his books, his letters, his writing, all these spoken and written words, just from Prabhupada's vast Vani, you can make a case for the Diksha Guru being prominent, or a very prominent Shiksha Guru. And for example, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he was initiated by Bipin Bihari Goswami, had some differences with his Diksha Guru apparently over where Mahaprabhu appeared, and also the nature of the parampara being a Shiksha parampara, the Thakur was convinced. So over time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur became closer to Vaishnav Sarvabhauma, Jagannath Das Babaji, because he was kind of the leader of the Vaishnavas in that day, even at that advanced age, over 100 years old. But he didn't, he was always respectful toward Bipin Bihari Goswami, but he became more inspired over time by Jagannath Das Babaji. So Banu Maharaj was saying, even from Prabhupada's own Vani, you can make a case for different gurus being more prominent. And this resonated with me because when I was doing the foundational research for the Founder Acharya seminars, I was writing our late great Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu letters while he was still with us. This is 2011, the year he left. He left in September, and in April, I started doing research for what became Founder Acharya seminars. So I was asking, I said, Gopi, Prabhu, who's the deliverer here? Is it the Diksha Guru? Is it the prominent Shiksha Guru? Is it the Founder Acharya? I mean, in the Gita in 1866, Krishna says, Ahang tvang sarva papebhyo, I will deliver you from all sinful reactions. So who is it? So the email reached Gopi Paranadhana Prabhu when he was on a train in China. And he said, well, I don't have all my references handy. But I know from studying Srila Jiva Goswami's Sandarbhas that if I went to Sri Jiva's Sandarbhas with this question, I know I could not pin him down to one person, because sampradaya vihinaye mantraste nishpala mata. It's really Krishna delivering us, as he says in the Gita, but how? Through the whole sampradaya. Through Purva Acharya, previous Acharyas, through Diksha Guru, Shiksha Gurus. Founder Acharya is very prominent. It's through Prabhupada's lens that we see all these previous Acharyas. So at the end of the day, it's Krishna delivering us, but it's how he delivers us. Krishna is very brilliant, the way he arranges different people to come into our lives to help us. So it's very personal, it's very individual, it's not stereotyped. And it takes, I make a paraphrase, in Africa they say it takes a village to raise a child. So I say it takes a sampradaya to raise a sadhaka. So we all need to be, in a sense, good shiksha for each other. We need to help each other. Okay, now, having said that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
This is Gaurgara Das Prabhuji.
Yeah, Gorgadhana Prabhu from Knoxville.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
We're being Zoom bombed from Knoxville. Somebody's crashing the party.
Prabhu, very quick question here, Prabhu. Like based on what we we heard from Prabhupada, you quoting from other Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and other acharyas. So it seems to be like the jiva, we being a preaching movement, so definitely we were being preached by someone, so now we are in devotional path. So it sounds that our devotional process won't be complete until we take this role of a spiritual teacher. And if that is the case, whether it suffices us to be just a shiksha guru going forward, like in the future, or also to be in the place, or also to be as a initiating gurus. What should be the position that going forward, all of us devotees who are on this sadhana path?
That's a good question. Were you present when I was quoting Prabhupada's purport in the first chapter of CC about how the initiating, instructing spiritual masters are equal and identical manifestations of Krishna?
Yes.
So you said just a shiksha guru. See, that kind of language is kind of a hangover from, it's been going on ever since Prabhupada left, right? Because we've had a culture in ISKCON, a guru-disciple culture, that's still not completely Founderacharya-centered. It's still largely Diksha-centered. And the Diksha Guru is very important. But as I mentioned, whatever the spiritual master is doing, the spiritual master is always teaching. So it's really all about shiksha, right? Even in that verse in the Gita, Tadvidhi Pranipatena verse, Upadekshanti. Upadekshanti. So Upadekshanti means they will initiate. And in the translation of the verse, that's in the word for word, they will initiate. And in the verse, Prabhupada says, the self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So the essence of Diksha is Shiksha. It's that transference of spiritual knowledge. So when we're transferring spiritual knowledge, whether or not we're officially, Diksha gurus, that's irrelevant, really. We all have to grow up and not only receive shelter, but give shelter. So we shouldn't worry about that. We shouldn't. We shouldn't worry about it at all. We just have to give shelter, and as much as we do that, we're satisfying Srila Prabhupada and the previous acharyas. Amara Gyai Guru Hanya Tare Desh. Mahaprabhu didn't specify Diksha Shiksha. Just be a guru and save this land, or depends on the capacity. At least we have to save ourselves, save our families, save our neighborhood. It depends on the capacity of the person. There's a nice purport in the, I forget where, I think it's in the first canto where Prabhupada's talking about, or maybe it's in the verse. Maybe Maharaj can help me with this. Birds fly in the sky and they have different capacities. Some fly higher than others. Something like that. So if someone knows the reference, they can help me out with that. But we have different capacities. But as much as we have capacity, we should, share what we've been given. The matchless gifts Prabhupada has showered on us. We, what do the French say? Noblesse oblige. Too much has been given, much is expected. We have to not only receive the wealth, but distribute the wealth.
Sure, sure, Prabhu.
Question.
Thank you very much. Hare
Jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I have a question. This is Rosikeli Dasi.
Oh, Razakeli, Hare Krishna, more Knoxville people.
Yes, Prabhu.
Hi.
I had my question was that like you were quoting on the first chapter of CC, so I was wondering like Kaviraj Goswami also further goes on to say that Lord Nityananda was his instructing spiritual master who instructed him to go to Vrindavan. So I was just wondering like, can we count Krishna as one of our instructing spiritual masters also?
Of course, as soon as we open the Gita.
Sure. Yes.
My god sister Rukmini, famous, wife of Anuttama Prabhu. That's a powerful couple there, boy. The international communications minister, ably assisted by his wife, who was actually senior to him, initiated in 1968 when she was 16 years old in Montreal, and so she. On August 15th, 1968, she received initiation. And then 3 days later, she was still there. And she asked it was a Bhagavatam lecture Prabhupada had given, and then she asked a question. And she said, when you're not here, you meaning Prabhupada, they just started calling him Prabhupada back in May. When you're not here, I feel so distant. I still feel so far away from you. So how can I feel close to you? And so Prabhupada said, oh, that you should not think. You shouldn't feel distant. And then Prabhupada right away started talking about Krishna. Just like when Krishna appeared 5,000 years ago, that's a long time ago. But as soon as we open Bhagavad Gita and hear Krishna's words in the Gita, immediately we're hearing directly from Krishna. Directly. And that's Prabhupada calls that the mystery of the disciplic succession. It's directly, but it's through the parampara. So that you should not think, Prabhupada said. As soon as we hear Krishna's word, immediately we're in his presence by the transcendental vibration. Similarly with the spiritual master. You should, and he was talking about himself. Oh, that you should not think. So whether it's Krishna or the spiritual master, if you're thinking of their instructions, then there'll be no separation. How did Prabhupada dedicate the Bhagavatam? He lives forever by his divine instructions, referring to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and the follower lives with him. Certainly the initiation is divine, right? Before the fire and the deity and the Vaishnavas and the spiritual master, one makes vows to follow the principles, to chant a certain number of rounds. And certainly the spiritual master's body, if it's used 10% in Krishna service, it's also Krishnaized, spiritualized. But he really lives forever, especially through that sound vibration. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. And now I got so wrapped up in that, I forgot your original question. Did I answer your question, Rasakeli?
Yes, bro. Thank you, bro.
Okay, good. Looks like we're 7 minutes to the hour. Any more questions or comments?
I don't think there are any more questions for this evening, Prabhu.
Okay.
If it's okay with you, can we sing the Nrsimha prayers?
Sure. Yeah, it's Jayadev Goswami's disappearance.
Oh, well, perfect.
Wow, how auspicious! Did you know that?
I didn't even look at the calendar today.
Well, you're on the transcendental wavelength here. Or well, let me look in the calendar. I think that's right. Yeah. Jayadev Goswami, Dashavatar. Yeah. Okay, great.
Well, thank you. Amit Bey, are the girls still awake to sing the Nrsimha prayers?
Yes.
Perfect.
How do we do it? Do we mute ourselves? Okay, they sing. Okay.
Namaste Narasingaya. Namaste Narasingaya. Pranateladedaine. Pranateladedaine. Hiranyakashipurvaksha. Hiranyakashipurvaksha. Shilatankanakanaye. Shilatankanakanaye. Ito nasingo parato nasingo. Ito nasingo parato nasingo. Yato yato yami tato nasingo. Yato yato yami tato nasingo. Bahe nasingo ridae nasingo. Bahe nasingo ridae nasingo. Narasingamadem sharanam prapade. Narasingamadem sharanam prapade. Tava kare kamala vare nakamabhuta shringam. Lalita hiranyakashipu tanubringam. Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Tavakare Kamalavare Nakamaputta Shringa. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanuvringa. Keshavarita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Nrsimhadev, 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 Jaya Nrsimhadev. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Nrsimha Bhagwan ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Thank you, Prabhu, for coming, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Yes, and next Tuesday, to give you a little preview, it's called the Founder Acharya Principle. Now that we've looked at this Guru Tattva in a certain depth, now we're going to look at a special kind of spiritual master, a guru of gurus, one in a zillion. And we're going to look at how that Founderacharya concept developed in our Gaudiya Sampradaya right after Mahaprabhu's disappearance, and how it finally manifested in the 20th century, and how Prabhupada, he played that role of Founderacharya like no one ever has. So a lot to look forward to. Same time, same Zoom link. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada
Prabhupada
ki
ki jai.
jai.
So tomorrow, Ras Kelly,
Jai.
Prabhu, Ras Kelly will continue the discussion on prayers of Queen Kunti and meet at 8 o'clock. We'll go back to our original time. Okay, Vaishnav Pranam.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya pavanebhyo namo namah.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare